Hi guys, welcome back. George Baltakian here. Today in this video, I'll be covering Burbank's Measure RC on the upcoming election ballot. Keep in mind, voting day is November 3rd. That's the deadline, so cast your votes before then. And hopefully this video will be unbiased and help you come to a voting decision, whether you're planning to vote yes or no. So here we go. Burbank Measure RC. This is all about rent control, adding a local rent control ordinance in the city of Burbank. Keep in mind, it's the first time in Burbank's history that we've implemented any local rent control ordinance or had it on the ballot. So to understand Measure RC, you first need to understand Assembly Bill 1482. And 1482 is what dictates the statewide rent control laws in California, which was voted in last year and became effective January 1st of this year, 2020. Every lease agreement in California essentially is affected by this. So 1482 capped rent increases by 5% per year, plus the rate of inflation or consumer price index increases, and also necessitated just cause evictions. So landlords now need a just cause to evict tenants, even if the lease is month to month. You know, they want to give advance notice, get the tenant out. They're no longer able to do that without a just cause. Otherwise, they'd have to pay relocation fees, which could be quite expensive. So under AB 1482, this is on specific multifamily properties, not every property with a lease. It didn't apply to single-family homes or duplexes or townhomes. This is on specific large multifamily. So some of the just cause reasons where a landlord would be able to evict a tenant without paying relocation fees, they fall into two categories. They fall into no fault and at fault. No fault means that the tenant's not at fault for anything, but the landlord wants to either repair the unit substantially, no minor repairs, but a big remodel of the unit. If they want to demolish the unit, if they want to take the unit off the rental market, if they want a resident manager living in the unit, or the owner wants to live in the unit themselves, they're allowed to evict the tenant for any of those reasons. Those are no fault evictions that fall under just cause evictions. An at fault eviction under just cause evictions are if the tenant is engaging in some illegal activity, if they're breaching the lease agreement somehow, if they're destroying the property or becoming a nuisance, if they're not paying the rent and not curing it in a timely manner, and if they're refusing to sign a similar lease, an updated lease that the landlord brings them within reason. So any of these reasons are considered at fault. They're just cause evictions. Currently under AB 1482, the relocation assistance fees are equivalent to 1 month's rent that the landlord would have to pay to the tenant if they break the lease agreement and evict the tenant for a non-just cause reason. So if Burbank Measure RC does get enacted, the rent control laws in the local ordinance of Burbank would be much more strict. So a few of the main points here are expansions to the just cause evictions, to the rent increase caps, and that it creates a landlord-tenant commission in the city of Burbank. Let's talk about the rent increases. So under AB 1482, the statewide bill, rent can increase by 5% per year plus inflation. But under Burbank Measure RC, once again, if it's enacted, then rent could only increase by the rate of inflation or the CPI increase. You wouldn't be able to do 5% per year plus inflation, but only inflation. And rent could only be increased once per year and by a maximum of 7%. But as you know, inflation in recent history typically goes up by an average of 2 to 3% per year. So the next point of Burbank's Measure RC is expanding just cause eviction requirements. So under AB 1482, like I said, it was for specific multifamily properties. However, if Measure RC passes, Burbank would require just cause evictions for more leases, for more properties outside of multifamily as well, including single-family homes, including townhomes, duplexes, and even some properties that already have affordable housing built into them, if they're owned by a nonprofit, a corporation, or an LLC. And as you might imagine, many families who own rental properties own them under an LLC to protect themselves. The last point of Burbank Measure RC is that it creates a landlord-tenant commission in Burbank. They would be handling all the disputes between landlords and tenants. They would be deciding how much relocation fees the landlord is subject to paying the tenant in any given situation. And the relocation fees would greatly be increased as well. Rather than being 1 month's rent, the relocation fees, if Measure RC were to pass, would be between $8,000 and $20,000 There are set amounts. Probably those are subject to change with inflation as well. But the way it's written in the law, if the tenant is there for less than 3 years, it's between 8 and 17,000, and if the tenant is there for more than 3 years, it's 10 to 20,000. And there are a category of qualified tenants versus non-qualified tenants, and tenants are subject to a higher relocation fee if they're 62 or older, as well if they're senior citizens. And also, I believe their income has an impact too. Supporters of Burbank Measure RC argue that the statewide assembly bill didn't go far enough to stabilize rent. And they point out that an estimated 60% of residents in Burbank are renters, not owners of their property. And if Burbank Measure RC were to pass, it would protect renters in 22,000 units. And opponents to Burbank Measure RC point out that the Landlord-Tenant Commission being created and maintained would cost the city of Burbank $5.5 million per year. That's an estimate. It's not set in stone, but that's what they speculate it might cost. And also, they argue the classic argument against rent control, which is that rent control discourages development and investment. So it discourages development because it makes it no longer profitable to develop rental property in a given area, which further exacerbates the housing crisis rather than helping it. And lastly, that Measure RC might have severe effects on mom and pop landlords and local families who are renting out their property. So to recap, a yes vote implements this rent control ordinance in the city of Burbank, making stricter tenant protections, and a no vote keeps things as they are. So I hope this was helpful, helped you understand rent control both in Burbank and the state of California. If you have any questions, please reach out to me directly or in the comments below. Subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video.